Hello and welcome to another Daily Academy NBA podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. Here talking about this time is cash game versus GPP lineup construction. Obviously, different game types call for different type of players, different type of lineup construction. So I'm going to kind of run you through the process and what you should be looking for GPP type of plays and cash game type of plays and things of that nature. So starting off, it's obviously very important to know what kind of contest you're playing, especially in NBA, DFS, and you need to know the difference between the two types. So I'll give you the quick rundown. I know most of you probably already know the difference, but cash game lineup, the type of contest this is suited for, 50-50s, head-to-heads, double-ups, and some small leagues, 10-man, 20-man leagues, things of that nature at times. Some players consider anything under maybe 20 to 50 players a cash game type of play. Other players have a little bit different, but for me, anything with 50 or less players that's not, for instance, a winner-take-all contest is something where I'm going to be playing my cash game lineup there. So 3-mans, 5-mans, anything like that. Here's what you want to do when you're building a cash game lineup. You want to take into account as many factors as you can. You want to start off by looking at Vegas lines, the over-under, the point spreads. You want to look for games with the highest totals and also games that are expected to be close. Targeting players in high totals is very key, paramount to your success in NBA, DFS. Obviously, higher totals mean more shots, more rebounds, more assists, more block shots, more steals, all of that. So if you've got two players that are similar, 189 point total to 210 point total, there's your tiebreaker right there. When you're targeting players here, you want players that have a solidified role and are playing big minutes. Players like Jimmy Butler, who averaged 38.7 minutes per game last season, most in the NBA. Andrew Wiggins, 36.2. Those guys make great cash game plays because you know they're going to be on the floor for the majority of the game. Andrew Wiggins isn't a guy last year who posted big-time numbers as far as GPP goes. He was a guy that was on the floor a lot. He took a decent amount of shots, but his peripheral stats were kind of lacking as far as when you factored in his salary, which was right around a mid-range salary. So he's a great guy that you know you got a nice high floor with, but not necessarily a big upside guy. So just because there's minutes there doesn't mean there's necessarily upside, but there is generally a very high floor with guys that are going to get a lot of minutes. So minutes generally equal opportunity, which can certainly turn into productions, but there are exceptions to every rule, much like Kyle Singler, who played 32 minutes per game when he was with the Pistons last season, but averaged just 17.5 FanDuel points per 32 minutes. So that's a guy who obviously no longer with the Pistons, but just as an example at that time, you see him and you're looking at minutes, you say, oh, Kyle Singler is playing 32 minutes. That doesn't necessarily mean he's a viable play. Certainly on a short slate, it's a guy that you consider as a cash game play, but you never really feel good about it. Does not have a high floor. You figure with an average of 17.5 points, I mean, you could see a 10-12 fantasy point performance, and that's not going to get it done for you in your cash games. Next up, you want to check out pace, which is the number of possessions a team uses in a given game. I'll give you a couple examples here. The Warriors, Rockets, Suns, Nuggets were all up there near the top in pace last season. All of those teams were all in the top 12 in points per games. More possessions, more opportunities to rack up fantasy points, as I mentioned earlier, and all peripheral categories as well. Teams that played with slow pace, Jazz, Heat, Knicks, Pelicans, and all those teams, aside from the Pelicans, finished bottom 5 in points per game. So, of course, there are exceptions to every rule, and it's important to look deeper than just one statistic, which is why I'm pointing out as many as possible here. Another one is usage rate. You could get a team that plays at a very low pace, for instance, like the Miami Heat, but Dwayne Wade, while Chris Bosh was out, had a huge usage rate. And yes, the team played at a slow pace, but when you get a big usage rate and you're locked into minutes like Dwayne Wade, he makes for a nice high upside and a nice high floor type of play. So it's important to keep all these factors in consideration, but not to just focus on one in general, because that's a mistake, and you could certainly be missing out on some potential by overlooking people simply due to one of these statistics. Next up is you want to look at a player's floor, their lowest potential output, projected, of course, and focusing on matchup is very important there. You want to target players in good matchups. Individual matchups are important, yes, but team defense is also very important as well. If you're going to target a team like Utah, generally speaking, in your cash games, that's a losing proposition. First, slowest pace in the league, which means less possessions, which means less fantasy production top to bottom. Next up, they got an elite rim protector. I think the best in all of basketball. Obviously, that's up for debate, but one of the best. It's impossible to argue that. And that's Rudy Gobert. So if you're targeting a player such as Tyreek Evans who attacks the rim, he's going to have less opportunities and he's going to be less efficient when he's attacking the rim because you've got a guy protecting the rim like Rudy Gobert. And also if you've got a guy going up against Rudy Gobert in an individual matchup, rebounds are going to be less. He's going to be have a lot of altered shots there as well. So focusing on good individual matchups is key, but you also want to look at good team matchups as well. Next, you want balance. Obviously, if you're new to NBA DFS or you're a casual fan, you look at LeBron James and Steph Curry and players like that and Kevin Durant, and you just want to lock those guys into your lineup. But in your cash game lineups, it's really important to get yourself some balance. You want to have a nice high floor because you certainly could get two superstars, LeBron James and Steph Curry, and a lot of times. But then you're going to be sacrificing at other positions. So if those players don't hit you, your 50, 55-point value threshold, then you certainly could be behind the eight ball pretty quickly. So it's important. You can certainly get one guy in depending on the slate, but it's important to get yourself some balance. You want guys across the board that you know are going to give you consistent production. Perfect example of this is Trevor Ariza. You know he's going to be 35-plus minutes. He always does. Contributes in every category. He's got rebounds, assists, steals, every once in a while a block. And you don't necessarily need your cash game players to score a lot of real points. That's another big key here. A lot of people see, oh, this guy's only averaging 11 points a game. I mean, that's not going to be good enough. But when you factor in the fact that a rebound is worth more than an actual point, a assist is worth more than an actual point. You've got steals are worth twice as many as an actual point. Same for blocks. So it's key to find a good balance, not only in your each player's statistics, but across your lineup as well, because you can get a player that scores 25 real points all day long, but if they go 25 real points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, and you're paying a big-time salary for him, that's not going to get it done. You'd much rather have the guy scoring 12 points with 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and a block or a steal, something of that nature. So players who can manufacture production, even when their shot is not falling, is key in cash games. And that's I felt like the best way I could put it there. I mean, you need guys that they could be struggling on the offensive end, and they could still find a way to pay off their salary or very close to it and not hurt your cash games. Because if you get one guy who really, really struggles, maybe you get a guy shooting 4 for 18 for the game, and he just does not contribute in other categories, that could hurt your cash games pretty quickly. GPP lineup construction, obviously these are guaranteed prize pool tournament lineups. You don't necessarily have to worry about stability or floor. You want upside. And it's important to also know the scoring for the site that you're playing on. For instance, DraftKings has half-point bonus for three-pointers made, so and double-double bonuses and triple-double bonuses. And obviously triple-doubles are not all that common unless your name's Russell Westbrook or LeBron James. But it's important to notice this because you could target a player that doesn't have a ton of actual upside, but a guy that's, a double-double threat, a guy that gets a ton of rebounds. Maybe he gets in 10 points playing a soft interior. It's a good target for you there. Volume shooters is a good idea. Targeting a volume shooter is a good idea in GPPs. No longer have a site like Draft Street that took away negatives for missed sites. Big sites here, FanDuel, DraftKings, you're not losing any points for missed shots. So you can get a guy that chucks the ball up Allen Iverson style 28 times a game, and that's fine. It's not going to hurt you at all. It's opportunity and it's potential, so you got to like that. Another good idea for your GPP is targeting some bench players that have prominent roles in the offense. I'll give you a couple examples here. For instance, last year, Lou Williams was the sixth man. Sweet Lou for Toronto had a 27% usage rate in 2014, which was the 17th highest in the NBA. He's a bench player, averaged just 25.2 minutes per game, but he averaged 22.2 points per 36 minutes, which was the 18th best in all of the NBA. So this is a guy that, yes, he's not locked into big minutes, but when he's on the floor, he's generally the focal point of that offense. So a lot of people tend to shy away from bench players, but a guy like this, he had a couple huge games where he just got hot from the field, and you want that type of upside right there. Granted, he doesn't have a great floor because he doesn't have a whole lot. He doesn't play a ton of minutes. Doesn't really contribute very much outside of a scoring category. But like I said, this is the GPP part where you want to be able to target guys with big upside. And if you get Lou Williams off the bench and he scores 30 real points at his price tag, you're fine with that. Whereas you get a guy like Carmelo Anthony at his price tag, he scores 30 real points with a similar line. That's not going to help you out very much because he's not beating his price tag. So just keep that in mind. Value price players and high Vegas totals is also another strategy you can employ in NBA GPP lineups. Kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. If you target two similar players, same price point, one with a low total, one with a big total, you easily just choose the guy with the big total there. Another thing is game theory. There's going to be popular plays, chalk plays. There's a lot of situations in the NBA where there's a lot of must-play value plays, and those are guys who are stepping into bigger roles due to injury. things of that nature, or maybe a 1-game suspension, things like that. And it's important to be cognizant of these things and to find these things. And if you go on Twitter for about 10 minutes during a day, you're going to know if there's an obvious value play. You can see everyone talking about him, and unlike other sports, there's a lot of other sports where you see your chalk plays and you say, well, I'm fading this guy in a tournament. I want everyone to be low owned. That's not necessarily the case here in the NBA. And it's also important, especially on short slates, to know that FanDuel is a great example of this. Shooting guard's not a particularly deep position, especially on a short slate. So if there's only a few viable options, it's not that bad of a strategy for you to just go ahead and lock in those obvious options on your short slate and differentiate yourself elsewhere, because there's less potential value in targeting a guy who has a very, very low floor and not much upside simply because he's low owned. So don't overthink it. It's fine to have some players that are highly owned in your GPPs. Differentiate yourself elsewhere. And outside of that, having a unique lineup is great, like I mentioned, but it's also very important to be cognizant of recent injuries. And check out all of our content here at Daily Fantasy Cafe. We'll certainly be highlighting your obvious value plays and things of that nature there. So you want to be different, but don't be too different just for the sake of being different in your GPPs. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit with your strategy. If you got any questions, find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. You can find me at BigItaly42, or comment here below, or check us out on our forums. Got a lot of experts that would be more than willing to help you out with any strategy questions you may have. And good luck this season, and hopefully we'll see you at the top of some leaderboards.